Now you might be sweating and thinking, oh man, I've got to update my app to use the observation framework. And trust me, number one, it's actually not that bad, and you really don't have to migrate everything. If I'm being honest with you, it's actually a lot easier to migrate to the observation framework than trying to swim in a ball pit. And trust me, I would know from first-hand experience, because looking at this picture, I almost lost my life that day.
Oh my God.
Today, we're actually going to look at how we can migrate our apps to the new observation framework in this free observation course here on my channel. Now, feel free to check out the rest of this course and the source code in the links provided down below. We'll actually update this food ordering app, which is still using the observation framework protocol and other property wrappers as well. Because I like to put a bit of seasoning on my videos, I'll even cover things to look out for and potential issues that you don't want to miss. So without further ado, let's get this money. So just to help speed up this tutorial, I basically got an app template which you can actually access the source code in the link down below in Gumroad. And what this template covers is pretty much all the key things you would use from the SwiftUI data flow before the observation framework. So things such as publish, ObservableObject, ObservedObject, StateObject, EnvironmentObject, and bindings and AppStorage as well. So there's a lot of things that I cover in this template that you'll see us port over to the new observation framework. Now, if you want to go over any of those topics, I actually do have a playlist on my channel that actually covers the SwiftUI architecture using these things. So you can go and check that out if you want to understand what any of those keywords meant. Now, you can see on our screen here that we basically just have a basket, and I can just simulate like adding items to the basket and, you know, checking out items. So it actually doesn't interact with an actual API, but it's just like a simple, you know, app with items on the menu. Now, the first thing that we need to do when we're working with the observation framework is that before we actually use the observable object to listen to our source of truth. Now, starting with the observation framework, you actually migrate away from this and you just use the @observable macro, which if you saw my first video, you'd see why we use this. Now, we're going to go into our source of truth here, which is our basket manager. And within our basket manager now, rather than using this observable object protocol, we're going to change this to use the new macro. So we'll first of all import observation, and then we'll get rid of this protocol, and instead we'll just use the @observable macro like so. Cool. Now, when we do that, we're actually going to get an error now, because when you're working with Observable, you can't use the publish property wrapper. It doesn't exist. Instead, you don't even need this at all. You just need to have your properties within your source of truth. So we can simply just remove this and we can build this, and then now you'll see that the errors in this file go away. So we've done the first part. Now, one of the benefits of doing this is that now we're using Observable, our view will only update when it's listening directly to a property. So in our case, our list is going to be listening to this array of items, so it will refresh when it changes. But before that, if we weren't even listening to any of the properties in our UI would refresh automatically. So this is a massive performance boost that we get with Observable. Now we're going to get another build error, and that's because we go into our content view. You'll see here that it's complaining that we can't use the StateObject with the observable macro, which is correct. So instead of using StateObject and ObservedObject and trying to debate which one it is you need to use, all you need to do is just simply change this to state. So we're going to remove the StateObject, well, the object from here, and we'll just make it a state. So now it becomes the state or source of truth of this view, and that error now goes away as well. And if we build our project, you'll see that we still have some errors, and that's fine because we're still using references to the observed object, which we'll tackle in a second. Now, if you're enjoying this video so far, feel free to look at the source code in the link in the description box down below, and that will take you to my Gumroad page where you can access the source code for this. And stick around because we're going to go over a whole bunch of other topics such as migrating to Bindable, when to use binding, how to handle AppStorage as well, and a whole bunch of other things. So if you're enjoying this video, I really appreciate it if you left a comment down below and let me know what you're enjoying. And if you share the video, like, subscribe, and hit notification bell to get updates whenever I release a new video. So normally before, when you're working with like a state object, you would pass a observed object in the, well, you use an observed object in the child view, so you can actually pass from the parent to the child view the source of truth. Now, when you're working with observation framework, you can't do that. So instead, what you need to use is, rather than having an observed object, if we want to pass our source of truth down to children, we use the bindable property wrapper. And what that property wrapper allows us to do is basically create a link between a child and its parent that is marked with an observable macro. So let's update this to bindable. And that's in our item detail view. And if we build a project, we should get another error. So in our actual menu item view as well, we'll update this to bindable too. And we can do this because our basket manager is an observable object. So now we can access that source of truth and manipulate data within it. So if I build the project now, you'll see that those ones go away. We still have another reference of ObservableObject, so we'll update this as well to bindable. And we'll just build a project. And you can see that now the project has successfully built. So what I'm just going to do is just go into SwiftUI preview and we'll just play around with our app and see if it still works. So you can see when I'm adding items, it's all still working. The basket's being updated. I can see that when I tap on an item as well. I can view the item information as well between, when I'm tapping on an item and whatnot. So you might be wondering, okay, I use bindable, but why did I not use binding? Well, like I said before, you want to use bindable when you're passing down your source of truth to child views. The only time you really want to use binding is if you need to bind between a piece of UI and a property within your observed object. So let's say, for example, you have a text field and you want to monitor the changes that someone types and read and write those updates to a property. That's when you could use binding. When it comes to actually passing data between views, you might be thinking it's going to be a bit different. It actually isn't. Well, when you pass data between views, it's very similar, but there are a few rules that I feel that you should follow. Now, the first rule you want to follow is that if you need to change a model that's marked with observable, then you want to use bindable. If you want to read and write to a property within the model, then you might want to consider using bindings in your child views. And if you don't need to perform any read or writes at all, then you're safe to just use a constant because you don't need to change it. So you can just use a constant, and if that property was to change for whatever reason, your view would basically refresh if it needs to. Now, if we go into our basket view, you'll see that I've actually used on the basket manager here a bindable, but on our UI, there's nowhere where we actually change the model at all. So there's no need for this to actually be a bindable. Instead, it can just be a constant. So I'm just going to update this to be a let instead. And we'll just build our project again. And if I go back to my content view and just add some items, you'll see when we launch our basket, or when we open up our basket, it still works as expected. And that's because we don't really modify the actual items in this view. If we did change where I had like a swipe to delete, then it would make sense to make it bindable, but we don't. So it's fine for it to be a constant. So this is a use case as to when you want to use a constant against using bindable or binding. If you go deeper into the project, you'll see that we actually have this file here called settings view. And that's because in our tab view, we actually have two screens you can access, and that's our settings and also as well our, items in the list. Now, this doesn't do a direct conversion between the money. All it does is just change the formatting that you see on the screen. When you're working with SwiftUI previews, you can't actually see a tab view. So we need to run this on the simulator. So I'll just quickly run this so you can see it in action. Looking at our simulator now, you can see our two screens. And right now the currency is set to US dollars, but I can change this to yen. If I go back to our menu, you'll see that it's being formatted with the yen symbol. The nice thing about this is that if you look at our code, you'll see that we're still using the ObservableObject protocol as well as the AppStorage as well from before. So it's still actually possible to essentially mix and match your code with legacy and the new. So you don't have to migrate everything over. You can still keep some of the old functionality if that's what you want to do. And if I go into my root at entry point, you'll see that we're still using StateObject here for the currency manager. And if I go deeper into our content view, we've got the EnvironmentObject here. And the currency manager is being used to display the select currency code for a menu item. So this is a nice to have if you don't want to move everything completely over and you want to do like a slow migration, it is possible. And you might be wondering, okay, why would I want to stick with using the legacy way if you're showing me the new way? Tons like, what's going on here, bro? Well, there's a few reasons why you may want to stick with the old way of doing things. And one of the main key points that you should be aware of is that the AppStorage property wrapper doesn't work with the observation framework at this time of this recording. So if you're someone who has a lot of like AppStorage properties and you don't want to move them all over, you might be better off to sticking with what it is you have now. And then once it's supported, you can then start to slowly migrate it over. Now, if you're someone who wants to see how to handle the AppStorage, I actually am going to show you in this video, so stick around. But the first thing we need to do is actually do a bit of refactoring and use the environment. So rather than using the environment object, we want to now use the environment, which is new. So in the old way of doing things, you had environment object. All you need to do is just inject a class marked with observable into the environment and you can use it. So let's see how we can actually migrate this over, both our AppStorage and our environment. Now we'll go into our currency manager, and the first thing we'll want to do is get rid of this protocol like we did before, and we'll want to import observation, and then we'll now want to mark our class as @observable, like so. Cool. So we should get a whole bunch of errors, which is fine, and one of the main errors you're going to get is that AppStorage isn't supported, which is okay. So just for now, we're just going to delete this AppStorage because we can't use it. And this won't persist in user defaults as of now, but when we do add in the support for it, it will. So we'll tackle that later on in this video. Let's just migrate this over. So we'll go into our root app entry point first of all. And rather than this being a state object, we just need to mark it as state, like so. And then we want to also change our environment object here from environment object to just environment. Cool. So we've handled that in our main app entry point, but now we need to work through the rest of our files. So we'll just search for any reference of environment object in our project. And wherever we use the environment object modifier, we'll just rename that to simply just be environment. So I'll do it in this file here. And then we also have another reference of it here, so we'll just do it as well. All right, cool. And another thing I mentioned before is how we don't use this property wrapper anymore. We just simply say environment. So we can just remove this and we just declare the type of the class that we want to work with. Now, this type is going to be our currency manager .self, like so. Cool. And we just want to search for references of this environment object again. So we'll just update this here as well to also be currency manager .self, like so. Okay, cool. So we still got a whole bunch of errors, but wipe the sweat off your forehead. Trust me, we're gonna fix them. It's gonna be all right, man. So the first thing we need to do is actually fix our user default. So I actually want to persist this value in user defaults whenever someone selects a currency. So let's go back into our currency manager and we'll see how we can handle this. Now let's go into our currency manager here. All right, cool. Now, when you're working with the observation framework and you want to do some like custom code, you can actually write a custom observable property. And what I mean by that is you can basically write your own computed property that has a getter and a setter, and within each one of those getters and setters you can control what should happen. Now in our case, what we want is in our get we want to fetch what's in user defaults, and in our set we want to set our value in user defaults. So I'm going to type this out and then we'll break it down a bit more. So this might look like a lot of code, but let's just break it down. So we'll start off with the set because that's smaller, but all we're doing here is we're basically saying that if the key path, so if this property selected currency has changed, then we want to get the new value and we're just going to save it in user defaults, you know, using this key. Pretty straightforward. Now, alternatively, in the getter, so when we're trying to access the value, so if we try to give selected currency a new value, this will get executed, the set will get executed, and it will store that in user defaults. Now, if we try to access the selected currency property here and get a value, we're going to access the key path for that property. We're going to get set up user defaults. Then we're going to get the value for the key selected currency. Now, if that value is nil, then we're just going to return the first case in our enum. And then if we can access the value in user defaults, we'll return it to the object that's requesting it. So if you need to handle working with user defaults and the observation framework, this is the best way to do it. So some people create like macros where you can just do this for free, but I'm gonna give you a warning. Macros apparently if you build your own custom macros, they do slow down your project massively. So in my opinion, I've not saw any issues with this. I would just go with this approach. So we build our project, we'll still have some build errors, and the reason why is because if I just click on one of the errors, we're trying to use the environment inside of the body. Now, one thing you might not be aware of again is that when you're working with the environment in the observation framework, again, at this time of this recording, you can't create bindings with it. So what you have to do is have a workaround where you create a bindable property within your body and then use that to bind to the environment. So it's a bit of a workaround, and hopefully there's a fix or they improve it in the next dub. So let's do that now. Now in our body, to fix this, we have to do @bindable and then var, and I'm just going to call this currency manager to match the name of the property. You don't have to do this, but I just do it for consistency. And then we're just going to say currency manager like so. Cool. And you'll see that the error goes away. So let's just build it and see if we have any more errors anywhere else. And you can see that we access the environment here. So we're going to do a similar thing again. And then we'll just fix this because that's a wrong typo. So it should be currency manager like so. Cool. And now you can see the whole project has now built. But let's just run this on the simulator to test out everything, because we want to see if it actually persists the currency we selected. So you can see that it's still selecting the yen that I selected as a currency before. I can add items to the basket like so. I can view items in the basket. My total is looking all good. If I change the currency to pounds, you can see I can see the pounds now, which is good. If I rerun the app now, you'll now see that it shows it in pounds. Now, there is one small thing I do want to make you aware of when you're doing this technique as well with the user defaults, is that it can take a couple of seconds, maybe 1, 2, sometimes I've saw 3 seconds for it to actually sync up with user defaults. So that's something to just keep in mind if you're having to save, values. You may want to see a nice way to handle that. But after like 1-3 seconds, it updates it. In the next video, we're actually going to look at how we can build our own custom theme manager. So you should see that video now on this right-hand side of the screen. And that's everything from me in this video. So make sure you check out this video so we can see how we can work with the environment to build our own custom theme manager. So let's get it.